All right, this is chapter 18 of assorted events in which the plot thickens thicker. So if the plot thickens, we say that when whatever the problem is or whatever's going on in the story, it's becoming more suspenseful. You're figuring more things out, but it's becoming more suspenseful. As soon as the wheels rattled on cobbled streets, Jemmy felt an immense sense of relief. This was his turf, the city, and he knew more places to hide than a rat. Approaching the waterside fairgrounds, he saw prisoners in chains being marched aboard a convict ship. It lay in sharp contrast to the festive stalls and banners of the fair. Captain Nips eased the coach between a seller of live fowl and a juggler tossing colored balls into the bright noonday air. "Thanks for the jolly ride, Hot Potato Man," said Betsy. "Come along, Petunia. Let's fetch us a crowd and earn a copper or two." And Jemmy collected his battered bird cage. "Don't rush off, lad," said Captain Nips, hauling out a canvas load of firewood from under the seat. "Ain't I been listening to your stomach rumbling, bumbling for the last hour? Do me the kindness of filling this kettle at the pump. Soon as the potatoes are boiled up, we'll feast, eh?" Anxious as he was to be on his way, Jemmy hesitated. He was powerful hungry. That's an interesting way to not have to say he was very hungry. He was powerful hungry. Then Captain Nips laid a coin in his hand. "And while you're at it, stop off at the Cow Lady, the both of you, and get yourselves a couple mugs to drink." What do you think the Cow Lady sells?
Milk.
And Jemmy picked up the handle of the kettle, but almost at once Prince Rat snatched it out of his hands. "I'll do that." "You?" Jemmy replied. "It's servants' work." Have we ever seen Prince Rat wanting to do work? No. "Then who'd take me for a prince toting water?" He smiled. He laughed. "I've never been allowed to carry anything. Not my entire life." Jemmy led the way. He never regarded fetching and carrying as a privilege. Princes and such like were hard to fathom, but the sound of merriment lingered in his head. He'd never before heard Prince Rat laugh. They dodged acrobats and a stilt walker and a harp player. Through the hubbub came a great squeaky voice. "Jemmy! Rat catching Jemmy!" Turning, Jemmy spied a tall boy wearing a checked cap. It was Smudge tending a sawdust pit, squared off by a board fence, a dog and rat pit. Beside him stood a stack of rat-filled cages and a black terrier leashed to a post. "By gigs, it is you, Jemmy," said Smudge. "Reckon you call the king by his first name these days." "Hello, Smudge. You give up mudlarking?" "I've come up in the world, ain't I? Same as you, Jemmy. How do you like me dog? Best rat fighter you ever saw." With a practiced eye, Jemmy surveyed the cages. "But those rats look tame enough to eat off your hand." I'm going to reread that, because when I think of rats and they say eat off your hand, I think of them like eating off my hand. But listen to what he's saying. He said, "Those rats look tame. If they're wild, that means they're crazy. They'll do whatever. Your dog, if you have a dog or a cat at home, it's tame, right? Enough to eat off your hand. That means that I could put something out and they would just eat it off my hand like my dog would, right? Best I could afford. Catch me some castle rats and I'll make a special feature. The king's own rats. Not my line of work in the castle, Smudge." "It's not true you're a wicked boy, is it?" Jemmy felt a flush of embarrassment and dodged the question. "I've learned to read and write." "Nah, the bottom truth. I've read many a book from beginning to end." "What's in 'em?" "All nature of things. I can do sums, too." Smudge was impressed. "Ain't that a wonder? I never heard of a rat catcher could read and write and do sums. It don't fit. Don't forget your old friends when you grow up to be Duke or something." "I aim to go back to the sewers," replied Jemmy stiffly. "I'll catch you some rats first chance." But even as he said it, Jemmy felt a bleak discomfort. He would miss the shelves of books he'd left behind in the castle. In the sewers, he hadn't been aware of his own ignorance. Ignorance is not knowing something, okay? He saw no choice now but to return, but he realized he'd lost his taste for ignorance. So notice how the author is already showing you how some of the characters have changed, How has Prince Brat changed? Raise your hand so we're not talking over each other. Hayden, how has he changed?
He used to not like the prince, and now he does.
That's Jemmy. But think about right when the hot potato man gave them the kettle, what changed about him? Hayden? About the prince.
He's now wanting to carry stuff and do stuff.
He wanted to do work. And when he went off to do the work, what did Jemmy say about him? He'd never heard the prince what? Laugh. So all of a sudden the prince is happy. And now Jemmy, how has Jemmy changed? He's been wanting to go back to rat catching, and all of a sudden, what does he just say? Lena?
He wants to, this is the books at the shelf that he left.
Right, he misses all the books and the things he had in the castle. But at the beginning, you couldn't wait to get out of the castle. So think about those things as you keep reading. Smudge was saying, "Who's the cove?" "What?" "Your pal." "This is," Jemmy caught himself. He began to stammer. I mean, this is, the prince answered for himself. "Friend o' Jemmy's the name." "Then friend o' Jemmy'll do." Smudge put out his hand to shake. Jemmy caught Prince Brat's momentary confusion. He never shakes hands. "Of course I do," said the prince with a quick grin. He took Smudge's hand. "Glad to shake your hand, Smudge." Now, do you think that when the king would, if the king were to walk through the streets, would he shake everyone's hand?
No.
No, because he's what?
The king.
He's the king. He's higher than them. And that's how the prince has always acted, right? I'm better than this. I'm the prince. You have to, like, think of even when they first got kidnapped, right? He would say things to the thieves like, "That's mine," right? "I'm the prince. Bow to me," right? Did he think that the thieves should respect him just because of who he was? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. And now Smudge doesn't know how to read or write. Smudge catches rats, and the prince is very happy to shake his hand. So notice that change. "Likewise," said Smudge, and Jemmy dragged the prince away. Smudge had committed a terrible offense. No one was allowed to shake hands with a prince. "Why did you do that?" "Because I've never shaken hands before," the prince said. He could be hung for less. The prince was staring at his hand. It felt friendly, trusting. "I may introduce the practice at court when I become king." Jemmy's ears pricked up. "King, is it?" he thought. "So it was just bluster that you might never go back to the castle? Ugh, I hope you don't want to learn to catch rats first." Moments later, they came to a stout old woman with hands as gnarled as tree roots. Beside her, munching grass, stood a cow with a brass ring in its nose. "New milk," the cow lady called out. "New milk, fresh from the cow, best in the land. New milk." Jemmy handed over the coin. The milk lady fished 2 mugs out of a tub of water, sat on a stool, and began to milk the cow directly into the mugs. Her aim was skilled as an archer's. "Have you heard the earful?" she said. "Our prince has been abducted." Imagine. What word is she trying to say? Do you know?
Abducted.
Abducted, which means
Taken. Kidnapped.
Kidnapped. Is taken a word?
No.
Taken. "Imagine," the prince replied coolly. She was looking directly at him. "Our darling poor king," she went on, "weeping his royal eyes out, no doubt. Though why he'd spring a tear for that little toad, I don't know. A mighty terror, they say, is Prince Brat. Pity us the day he becomes king, eh?" She handed over the pair of mugs. Jemmy drank the warm milk down in unbroken gulps. But then he noticed the prince standing motionless, a vague, unseeing look in his eyes. For certain he knew everyone called him Prince Brat behind his back, didn't he? "Drink up, lad," said the cow lady. "My stars, I've never seen such rags on a boy. They look like cast-offs from the old clothes man." She gave out a joking laugh. "Drink up before you scare off business." The prince drained the mug and shuffled away. As they filled the potato kettle at the pump, he looked at Jemmy. Treasonous old woman, I could have her tongue ripped off for lying. But there was no steam in his voice. Taking a whipping was bad enough, but to learn that his subjects dreaded the day that he would grow up and become king had deeply shaken him. "She meant no harm," Jemmy murmured, keeping his eyes alert for soldiers. "Is that what they call me? Sprat? Jemmy nodded. Does everyone hate me? More than likely. What about you? And Sprat asked. So make a prediction in your head what Jemmy's going to say here. Jemmy hesitated for a moment. I did, but maybe I don't. Jemmy couldn't sort out his feelings. The pot's full. Let's go. It took the two of them to carry the iron kettle, now full of water. They passed a magician with a bald head, a street fiddler, an umbrella seller, his wares open around his feet like black silken mushrooms. Suddenly, there loomed up a soldier on horseback, his eyes on the search. There was nothing to do but brazen it out. Jemmy took a tighter grip on the handle, but was ready to fly if he had to. The soldier passed by with only the merest glance. What was he looking for? A prince in fine velvets and a crown on his head? Was it clothes that made a prince, Jemmy wondered, just as rags made a street boy? He had the notion that the prince felt secretly disappointed not to be recognized by any of his subjects. Wasn't he getting his head stuffed with surprises? Before long, potatoes were boiling in the pot. Here's a picture of them. Not far off, Betsy had drawn a crowd with Petunia, now balancing a gentleman's hat on his nose, and then the bear began passing the hat for tips. Jemmy no longer felt the slightest concern about the soldiers. He had no doubt that Hold-Your-Nose Billy would trace him and the prince to the fair. Hadn't they fallen into the company of a girl with a trained bear? Where else would she be going? Finally, Captain Nips began spearing boiled potatoes, and Betsy returned with Petunia. We could eat a bushel, she exclaimed, jingling a handful of coins. Courtesy to fellow artists, said Captain Nips, refusing the money. He split open a pair of plump potatoes. Salt and pepper? Pepper for me, salt for Petunia. Captain Nips reached into one coat pocket for a pinch of salt and into the other for pepper. So just think about that. If you put salt and pepper on your food, where do you get it from?
Your pocket. Somewhere else?
A shaker.
From a shaker. I get it out of the cupboard and then I shake it on. So when you bought from him, he opened his jacket like this. He said, oh, you want some salt? He took it out of his pocket and put it on there. And then he said, you want some pepper? He opened the other side of his jacket, took it out of the pocket and put it on there. Let's see. Salt for me, said Jemmy. And you? Captain Nips asked the prince. The heir to the throne balked for a minute or a moment. That means he was like, huh? And Jemmy knew why. He'd certainly never eaten a potato before. In the castle, roots were regarded as peasant food. I don't know, the prince stammered. When in doubt, salt, chuckled Captain Nips. And then he began calling out to the passing crowd. Hot, hot, hot potatoes! Captain Nips, hot, hot, hot potatoes! Jemmy gorged himself, anxious to be off and not certain when he would eat again. The prince nibbled at first with his fingers, and then threw his royal pride to the winds. He bit off whole mouthfuls. A ballad seller was working his way through the crowd, crying out his wares. Do you know what a ballad is?
No.
It's a song.
Oh, yeah.
So a ballad seller is somebody who sells songs. It means people pay them and they would sing them a song. But they often would sing about news that was going on as well. So he was working his way through the crowd. He waved a bamboo pole with long paper streamers fluttering from the tip. 3 yards of songs, a copper, old songs, new songs, sing 'em yourself. 10 verses of poor pitiful Polly will make you weep. 16 verses of that notable highwayman, Hold-Your-Nose Billy. Jemmy's ears pricked up as the ballad seller began singing a sample of his merchandise. I'm not singing to you, but I'll read it. But I can tell that they're singing because they changed the words or the print to be the italics. Hold-Your-Nose Billy, a wild man is he, hang him from a gallows tree. Here he comes, there he goes, don't forget to hold your nose. The street song had once amused Jemmy, but now he only sharpened his eyes. He wiped his hands on his sleeves and turned to Captain Nips. Thanks for the grub, sir. Where are you off to? Asked Betsy. Here's the place to put a jingle in your pockets. Can't you turn cartwheels or something? I catch rats, Jemmy said simply. Rats? Betsy made a face. What on earth for? There's good money in sewer rats. The meaner the better. My eyes, exclaimed Betsy. Don't you get bit? Many a time, said Jemmy. Captain Nips cocked an ear. What's that running patter yelling about? A crow-like voice pierced the air, and then the news seller appeared, his tongue wagging like a bell clapper, a bundle of broadsides under his arms. Okay, so now this is somebody, a news seller. It tells you the song seller sells what? Songs, or the ballad seller. Okay, so he sings songs about different things. It might be about a news, but news that's already happened. The news seller is telling you the new news. So you pay them rather than getting a newspaper, because most of them couldn't read. You pay him and then he'll tell it to you, or he'll be yelling it. So this is what he's yelling. Prince sold the gypsies the true and genuine facts. Ink still wet. Whipping boy charged with dastardly scheme. King offers reward for the unspeakable rascal, dead or alive. Full description. Get your copy. Keep your eyes peeled and catch the reward. So who are they looking for now?
Prince Jimmy.
They're looking for Jimmy. The running patter was selling his broadsides almost as fast as he could yell. The facts were cockeyed, but Jimmy grabbed his birdcage, backed off, and he was gone.